Hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time round we've got a little bit of something slightly off our normal fare in the workshop here. We're not particularly Alfa Romeo specialists, but we just happen to have a customer whose son has this car and he's asked us if we can fix it for him. So the answer is yes on this occasion. But it's a Alfa Romeo 105 series, and this is the 2000 GTV. And it's a surprisingly popular car. They made of the model as a whole, the 105 or Cinquecento, which sounds far better than 105 really. But anyway, they made over 250,000 of this body style or body variation, including the spiders, etc. And this particular car was made in South Africa at a satellite factory there, as quite a lot of European cars were actually. And it's just come in for some work, just some remedial work to exhaust, brakes, good service, things like that. So I have tuned a lot of them over the years as a job, just come in for tuning and going out again. And I've road tested a few of them, but it's been a while since I've actually driven one. And I seem to remember they're quite a delight to drive because they're so absolutely light and analogue. I mean, this is just about 1,000 kilos, just over the metric ton. And it's 130 brake horsepower, so it's got a great power to weight ratio. If you think in terms of an original Mini, the 1959 Mini, being 3/4 of a ton and having about 45 brake horsepower, this is going to be a lively car, 25% more weight, but almost 4 times the power. Beautiful little car. Bit like the TARDIS really. It doesn't look that big on the outside and it's quite a small car as cars of the 1960s were. But on the inside it's big. You can almost fit 4 full-size adults into it, which is amazing really. So packaging wise, car manufacturers of this era could really teach modern car makers a thing or two about squeezing a quart into a pint pot. Very impressive packaging, like the Lamborghini Espada. There's no space wasted. The Espada is a full 4-seater and luggage space and large fuel tanks for a good range and a V12 and air conditioning and. And this was Giorgetto Giugiaro who designed this. It was one of his first projects for Bertone, who of course styled some of the most iconic cars of the mid-60s onwards. Giugiaro designed the Lotus Esprit, which was a stunning design from the early 70s, and many other wonderful, wonderful cars. So yeah, I'm just going to tune the engine, tickle the carburettors with my trusty hosepipe and screwdriver, just to make sure that everything's tickety-boo in the carburation department. Very important to be tickety-boo. And then we'll give it a run on the road and see how it goes. But yeah, a bit of a departure for us, as I say, but it's worth doing a video on. The opportunity's arisen, it's here, and we've sort of done some work on it. So yeah, let's see how they run. And this is Alfa Romeo's beautiful all-alloy inline 4-cylinder twin-cam engine, which was their staple engine for decades. And it was one of the first production all-aluminium engines. In 1954, it came out. But here it's in its sort of largest capacity, which is 2-litre, 2000 cc. And I'm just going to adjust the carburettors, which is the last stage of the procedure. It won't take very long. This car is not in Concours condition, and that's not the owner's intention. He wants a car to use, so we make no excuses for the fact that the engine is not better than new, really. It's a working car, this. So I'll just get on and tune the carburettors now, and then we can take it for a run. Here we are out on the road in this lovely little Alfa Romeo, and one thing that is immediately obvious, as it always is with cars like this, is how light everything is. The word I would use to describe this, the adjective that comes to mind, is dainty. Everything is just ever so dainty. This is where cars of this era really come into their own, and the Italians in particular knew how to make cars where everything, you could just steer it with your little fingers, really. Very much reminds me of the original Lotus Elan, and I know Harry Metcalf has got that lovely Elan Sprint, and he sort of says that you know, if only modern cars could drive like that. It's an object lesson in everything just being absolutely super light, and this car it falls into that category. It's just lovely. There's no effort at all involved in steering or changing gears. I mean, I can change gear literally with one finger, even down to second gear, which is the Achilles heel, he says, crunching the gear slightly on Italian cars, but just lovely. And as I say, the steering again, it communicates beautifully what's going on the road underneath. It's a lovely sensory experience, this car, and although it's tiny already, it does almost feel like you're in a little scooter or something. It's so tiny and yet so absolutely lovely and precise. Just a jewel of a thing, really. 5-speed gearbox, and of course the icing on the cake is that lovely, sweet twin cam all alloy engine, which in this case is almost square, which means to say, that terminology means that the bore, the size of the cylinders, is almost the same dimension as the travel of the pistons up and down in the cylinder. It's still slightly under square, which means the travel is longer than the bore diameter. But the 2-litre version, this one, they all have the same stroke, so the bore size got very small and progressively bigger from 1300 to 2 litres. But the advantage of that is that these engines, for all their peppiness and twin cam design, are actually a torquey engine, because stroke gives you more pushing power on top of the piston. It gives you more torque low down, whereas a small bore gives you lighter pistons and higher RPM potentially. So Alfa Romeo erred on the side of torquiness, which is why all their engines pull so well from low revs, in spite of being an all-alloy twin-cam design. And it's so charming, this car. It really is. It's very sweet. And now that it is warmed up, after the work we've done on it, I'll just try the acceleration. Nothing wrong with that. Lovely. Genuine pulling power. The engine develops 130 brake horsepower, and this car is just over 1,000 kilos, just over the metric ton, which means it's got a power to weight ratio of 130 brake horsepower per ton, which is pretty good, actually. And consequently, it's got quite a lot of lugging power. Yeah, very sweet little car. You can see why these were so popular, and Alfa Romeo did make a lot of them. They also made them at their factory in South Africa, which is where this car's come from. And the advantage of this, of course, is that it hasn't had the ravages of the UK climate with its salt and in the winter and all the rest of it, and a huge proliferation of rain. It hasn't had to fight those for survival, and actually this body shell is very good on this car as a result, which is a good place to be. What is it? Nearly 50 years on since this car was built. Yeah, just a nice relatively rust-free Alfa Romeo is quite unusual. And of course, an Alfa Romeo wouldn't be an Alfa Romeo without gorgeous handling. And you just point and shoot with this, really. So we'll just take it through a couple of bends. Oh, it almost feels limitless, the handling. Very, very strange. Which is just as well with large trucks coming at you on the other side of the road. But yeah, you almost get the feeling that this car is driving itself. I know that might seem a strange thing to say, but it's sort of intuitive. You just think about moving the wheel, and before you know it, you're going around the corner, and you think about changing gear, and before you know it, you've done it. It isn't always with cars of any type, in my humble opinion. They don't have to be. I mean, I did that video a while back on the Ford Capri and the BMW 3-litre CSI. They don't have to be worth millions of pounds to give you pleasure. In fact, I'd venture to say you probably can throw this around more than you would a car that's worth a lot more money. And just enjoy the sensation. And modern cars, with all their safety kit and weight, you know, you feel it. The steering is more often than not electrically assisted these days, which means you don't have decent feel and feedback through the steering. All the controls are sort of aloof, really. But this is it's just lovely. It really is. Just sticks to the road, in spite of that live rear axle. This car really does put a smile on your face. What more can you say? Surely that's what it's all about. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. We will be back with something else in a little while.